Hello, welcome to another edition of Prove All Things. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or X, or on the CGI Digital Network app, whether that's on your phone, tablet, or television. Thank you for joining us. I am joined with co-host Mike James. How are you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, doing well. Good to see you today.
Hey, good to see you as well.
Hey, I just want to let the audience know next week we're going to be taping Robert Onsando from Kenya to try to finish up the program he was doing about a month ago. So that'll be for next Tuesday. And then the last Tuesday of the month, Jeff, we've got a person who's written a book about a medical issue that they had with a bug bite and the spiritual lessons they kind of learned through that whole experience. So we'll have her on the last Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, I have her book about that. I'm holding off reading it till right before, so it'll be fresh in my mind. But I'm definitely looking forward to having her on the program. Yeah, things are going well here in Atlanta. I'm planning on being in Tyler, Texas. That's where our office is at for Church of God International. So I'm gonna go visit there. We have a board meeting, and then I'll be able to speak this weekend in Tyler, which I haven't done in a while. I used to be the pastor of that church a few years back, so it'd be good going back and visiting with everyone and seeing how things are in Tyler, Texas.
Great.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll bring in our guest today, Abraham Joseph. AJ, how you doing?
Doing great. How are you guys doing out there?
Hey, doing well. Good to see you again.
Getting ready for your feast plans. Hope you have something solidified. I still haven't made up my mind yet. We got a new one on the way, so we were thinking Florida, and it might be we might stay in Texas. So we're kind of on the fence right now. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm going to start in California for a couple days, and then I'm heading down to Galveston, I think, for a little bit.
Oh,
there.
really? Yeah. That's on my short list, by the way.
Okay.
Galveston. I might see you up there.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, looking forward to the feast. I'll be down in Panama City Beach. That is a great location nice. With the Common Faith Network. A larger location, 700 or 800 people, but it's nice. Nice location.
Yeah, Florida's always nice. Yeah. Well, great.
All right. Well, hey, it's good to have you here. We kind of moved the schedule around to get you in here earlier than we would have had you because of some developments in the news that have taken place, and you wanted to maybe help us understand some of these developments.
Sure. Well, just real quick to introduce myself again. My name's Abraham Joseph Sanchez. AJ works fine. I'm a father of 6. I live out in East Texas, just north of Houston. I'm an electrical contractor, and when I'm not doing that, I do a lot of writing. I've got a YouTube channel, My Hebrew Roots, and I'm a writer for my blog page there and for Herald of Truth as well. And so far, I've produced about 30 articles so far. So if you get a chance, check out my website and read some of my articles.
Hey, that right there is coming in backwards.
Backwards. That's no good.
Yeah. So, kind of flip. Needs to be mirrored.
Yeah, I should fix that when we're not on the air, right?
Yeah. Okay.
No worries. No worries.
All right.
We've had a few backward things on our program.
Yeah. Again, if you can't fix it, I have a button that will fix it, but I don't want to mess with your stuff if everything else is normal.
Yeah, there's a setting here somewhere that I could find it in about 10 minutes if you want to.
Yeah. Well,
I can relate.
If it's flipped again, I'll flip your screen so everybody can read what you have to present.
There you go.
All right.
Well, I do want to talk today about Noah's Ark because, like you said, there's repeated more information that comes up about it. A lot of it's poo-pooed in the news, so yeah. I'd like to bring some clarity to it, and help you divide the lies from the truth. Hopefully, I mean that's what the program's for. But
Yeah,
Noah's Ark.
the Noah's Ark. I guess I just want to mention. I remember when I was a kid, there was a documentary about Noah's Ark back in the '70s, and and their premise was there. I guess there was something on Mount Ararat. There was like a remains of Noah's Ark.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
That they were saying that you could see satellite images of where this may be resting on Mount Ararat. But
yeah, I've got some great photographs. We'll get to them. I don't want to.
okay,
I don't want to
okay,
spoil it.
Hey, just at the beginning, that just like with the Exodus, AJ, there's more than one site too that some people talk about. Is that correct? Also,
yeah, but when we go through the evidence and you see, many times it's based on the preponderance of evidence, and when you see it pile up for the Durupinar site is the one I'm going to pointing towards. It's really hard to ignore it. And a lot of the tells that archaeology use are all at that site.
Okay.
And that's one thing we're going to get at is if there's so much evidence that points towards the Durupinar site, why hasn't anybody done a dig there? And that's the other big thing that's going to come up. Well, the universities control the process, and you have to be a acknowledged archaeologist, and you have to be part of their groups in order to even file the application. And to this day, right, everybody wants to poo-poo the Durupinar site, but to this day, not a single university has put forward an application to actually go and dig it. And at the same time, they discount it because, well, you guys have never done a dig there. Well, they're the ones that are controlling the process. And that's,
yeah, I guess what I've heard as the first criticism that they say it was just a geologic formation is what they say.
Correct. They say it is. But as we go through the evidence, once again, we're going to see there's just a preponderance of evidence that it definitely warrants a dig. And that's the one thing that they won't do.
I'm surprised there hasn't been a dig there. What I've heard about this site.
Well, if you look at Biblical Archaeology Review magazine, they're a classic example, Bar magazine.
Right.
And you read their articles, many times they're only interested in the parsley on the outside of the plate. All these little trivial matters like, oh, we found this fishing boat. Could this be the fishing boat that the 12 apostles used? Or they'll find some, pot. Could this be the same style of mug that Christ drank at the Last Supper? Just stuff that has no I mean, it doesn't prove anything. It's like it's the garnishment on the outside of your steak, but the actual real archaeology that bolsters and supports our faith and proves that God exists, they won't touch it. They won't touch it.
So that's an interesting insight you're making there on something like why would we be talking about Noah's Ark versus some plate that may have been used in that time frame. It's because Noah's Ark is in the Bible, and that can help prove the validity of the Bible. Not that we don't have faith in it, of course, already, but proving the Bible then leads to other questions and answers, right?
Yeah. And not only do they have no interest in doing those types of digs, but they suppress it. And that's the issue here, and that we're going to see.
Okay.
A good example of this is, so I was listening to this lecture from Yale University. It was Christine Hayes. She's a director of religious studies. Sorry, Freudian slip there. And she's the director of the college there on the Old Testament, director of the Old Testament studies, and she's doing this lecture, and she brings up she's in her lecture, she's talking about the Noachian flood, and she's bringing up these interesting points that in every civilization in the Near East, right? We're talking about Sumeria, Babylon, the Hittites, Transjordan, that whole area there, they all have flood stories. All of them have a flood story. Well, and then she goes on to say, well, this just means that Moses wasn't inspired with the information about the flood story. He just plagiarized it from all the areas around him.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, that's a classic example of spin, where they take something that would normally be good and beneficial and would, you know, bolster people's faith, and instead they poo-poo it and they spin it around and they make it into something bad.
Yeah, because you talk about preponderance of the evidence. The preponderance of the evidence of the stories shows that there's people who recorded that there was a flood and that they knew it in all these civilizations. I think not even there, but I think also like in other civilizations around the world, there's these flood stories.
Right, and that's oops, sorry. That's the issue here. Is it's not just in the
Near East.
Near East, it's everywhere throughout the planet. Everywhere they have got a flood story. And so and around the world there is like 500 different civilizations that have a flood story almost identical to the biblical account. In the areas of U.S. Native Americans have tons of stories on it. There's stories from the Hopi Indians, the Polynesians. They found multiple petrographs throughout Southwest United States. The Anasazi Indians, as well as the Nuzi Indians, they have petroglyphs of a flood. And so once again, this lady, Christine Hayes, it isn't just the fact that she's spinning a lot of this information. It's also the fact that she is leaving out a lot of important information.
Yeah. Hey, listen, you're hitting on something really big there, AJ, where these people who have degrees, they're from prestigious universities, they're the ones that get quoted in the newspapers and on the news at night. And again, they're just opinions of these. They're smart people, but they're just opinions. They're speculation. But because of their position, those ideas get promoted out there. You're exactly right.
Yeah, well, they have an atheistic worldview, don't they? They believe that miracles are impossible. Since they believe that miracles are impossible, they have to explain everything away rather than say, "Hey, maybe it was a miracle. Maybe something happened that's out there."
But it's one thing to just offer up an alternate explanation, but when they specifically suppress information, like this map here that shows all of these different flood accounts across the world, and they specifically suppress it and don't tell you in there. I mean, that goes beyond just having a different worldview. They're just straight up lying and suppressing information.
So all those little dots on your map, AJ, is where there was a real flood story and archaeological evidence or something that says that this is what these people talked about.
Correct.
Okay.
So in 95%, and these are communities because there's might be multiple villages that are represented by each one of those markers, because there's 500 of them. There's 500 of them around the planet. And 95% of them, they describe some catastrophic or global flood event, right? And then 88% of them say that there was a specific family or people that were chosen and protected, okay? And then in 70%, they say that survival was achieved specifically through a boat or a vessel that saved them from this catastrophic flood. And then 67% mentioned that the animals were saved along with humans. And then about the same amount, 66%, attribute this flood to moral wickedness, and that God, caused this event. And so these flood stories are everywhere around the planet, and also in a lot of isolated locations. And people where we can prove they have had no outside influence. Polynesia, for instance, these isolated islands.
Or also places where they don't have floods, right? Isn't there like locations where they don't normally have floods? to even have
exactly.
another
You
order.
know,
That's very curious. Yeah.
yeah. Right. And what's also interesting is how they record their stories, because they all have different ways of recording these stories. And one very interesting one is the way the Chinese have recorded it. So, for instance, if you look at the Chinese word for flood, so they're logographic. A form of writing where they are iconographic, where they have an icon or a symbol for every uh, word out there, and they build your different words. But so first of all, the word total, everybody together, it comes together with 8, earth, and together. And you'll see a lot of words in Chinese that go back to the number 8.
Mm-hmm.
Why the number 8? And so then if you want to know how they built the word flood, it's made up of the earth, 8 together, and water.
Mm-hmm.
So a flood involves 8 people and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, definitely. I did a sermon on the number 8 once in Scripture, AJ and Jeff. The idea of new beginnings with the number 8, strikes me also there.
Yeah. So let's look at the word drowned here. So drowned, once again, you got everybody together, which includes 8. And once again, you got water, and everybody's together. Now, this little symbol here, which is all, okay, let's see what that is made up of, right? So here's how you get the word ship. Ship is made up of people, 8 people specifically, and then you got a large boat, or a smaller boat, and you put that all together and you get a large vessel. So why would the word vessel or large ship include the word 8 people? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
it definitely is. I've seen some things with Chinese characters relating to the Book of Genesis, but please continue. Very interesting.
And then once again, the word destroy uses the word water and forever, meaning you're just completely gone, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's what the root word for destroy means, to destroy forever with water. And so once again, you have these stories that they grew up knowing that really shaped how they built their words. Mm-hmm. And so that's just one way of how many civilizations out there have passed these stories on down through the ages, like the Chinese. There's the one very interesting is the Hmong people in southwestern China, and I can show you real quick here on the map where they're at. They are right over here, if you can see this spot right there.
Okay.
And because they were in a very dense, you got a lot of dense jungle around it, and then they're up in the highlands area there, just below where you get into the highlands of the Chinese desert. They were very isolated for a long period of time. And they have this story that they passed down over the years, primarily through songs that anytime they have a wedding or a funeral or some major community event, they chant these stories and they sing these stories. And then these stories that they pass down for generations, they talk about how the world became corrupt and a righteous man named Noah was warned of impending judgment. Wow. And he was told to build this massive watertight vessel, which they call an ark. And in their stories, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights and brought water over the highest of mountains. And everything tracks just like the biblical account. Noah and his wives, they entered in the ark. They bring pairs of animals in. They send a dove out to see if there's dry land. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard to explain when you have these flood accounts that are almost identical to the Bible. Mm-hmm. And so what these critics say is...
Hey, AJ, it's not hard to explain. It's easy to explain, I think, right?
Oh no, it's hard to explain when you remove the most obvious answer. It's like telling your kid, okay, tell me what's 2 + 2, but the answer can't be 4, and then you got this convoluted, response they have to give.
Right.
And so what they say is, well, they were just influenced by Christians and Jews who had come through the area.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is the Hmong people there, they've got no stories about Jesus Christ. They've got no stories about King David. They got no stories about Moses. I mean, if you're a missionary, that's the main focus of your trip there, is to try and bring them to Jesus or bring them to Judaism or whatever it is.
Yeah, I've never heard of a Noah missionary.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Aren't you mentioned these people were kind of in a remote area. I mean, when you go back to 1,000 years ago or whatever, I know the Brits came into China, but I know they didn't get everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and what's also interesting is many of these very remote people, like the Adamic Icelanders of over there by the Bay of Bengal. I'll show you where they're at. They are right down over here. And then you've got the Lenape Indians up here in Delaware. Mm-hmm. So they're very isolated. They have these very interesting flood stories, but typically they have a lot of stories that go right up until the Tower of Babel. Many of these people have a story about the Tower of Babel. They've got a story of creation that's very similar. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, once you get to the Tower of Babel, then they got nothing.
Mm. Yeah, so, people are like, wonder why that is. Where it's really obvious.
Well, you're this missionary. You go there, but you stop at the Tower of Babel. That's where I stop. I don't go any further than that. I made my money here. Everybody pays me when I tell them about the Tower of Babel, right? It's ridiculous. The Hawaiian people there, it's very interesting. They've got a flood story of a righteous man named Nunu. He builds this large boat to save his family from this global flood, right? Just like the Hmong people. But they also have a story about creation of man being made from red earth, that man was formed with the breath of life, that he created his wife out of a rib, right? Mm-hmm. And they also talk about the fall of man from the taboo tree. And they've got a story about Cain and Abel. And,
Hey, AJ, are there any books you're aware of that kind of put all these stories together and kind of package it up, or you're just picking this out from?
I do, but I don't remember. There's several books.
That's okay.
I'll make sure I have a bibliography next time.
Okay.
Put that on my to-do list. But I know specifically there is a book, and I'll try and give it to you. Maybe you can put a link on the website of the Hawaiian people, because they've got the best case. Because one is they're so isolated. Mm-hmm. If you look at this map, we don't think about it that much because we can fly. But way over here, there's Hawaii.
Wow.
Right? They're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And the other thing is when the first sailors came there, they had never seen a white man before. And then on top of it, they had no immunity to any of these diseases. And shortly after, they got wiped out. A lot of them did by European diseases because they had no immunity to it.
Yeah.
And once again, they had no stories about Moses or David or Jesus Christ. It was only about everything up until the Tower of Babel. And so once again, the question comes up is, how can you say they were influenced by Christianity or Judaism? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, and it's not just there. It's like over in Papua New Guinea. Okay. They practiced cannibalism up until like 20 years ago, right? They were eating each other, but they've got a creation and a flood story very similar to the Bible. Mm-hmm. If you look over here, you can see the area of New Zealand. They've got a very interesting, in Tahiti, which is way over here. They've got a flood story. How did the world get this the same story transmitted everywhere on the planet unless, maybe it happened.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. What's the most obvious answer?
Yeah, well, no, that's what they do is they exclude the most obvious answer, and you have to come up with something else.
Yeah.
And we need to be honest about the room that we're in. There's an extreme amount of anti-God bias in our universities and colleges.
Absolutely.
And they purposely suppress this information. And it's not just about these stories, which they just don't talk about them. That's all they can do, But the evidence that we do have, they always have a spin on it. For instance, if you look at our, and I brought this up before, is our geological layers. They're going to tell you that these geological layers were formed over, millions of years. And each one of these layers over here accounts for like millions and millions of years, right? And that's what they'll tell you. But what they don't tell you is that, first of all, there's no place on the planet where all of these geological layers exist at the same time. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay? There's no mountain that looks like that anywhere.
It doesn't exist. Yeah. And many times they have layers that are inverted. They have, which I like to hear about how that happened. They have the older layer supposedly above the younger layer. And then the other issue that they have is that quite often they have fossils in layers that shouldn't be there. And they have fossils mixed together that didn't live during the same time period. And so they leave out a lot of information. And the other thing,
you're right. You're right on again with evolution also, where there are all these holes, and they have speculative ideas and theories about the holes, but because everybody's taking their word for it, you don't hear the other side of the story. There is another way of looking at all this.
Well, they control the narrative. It's just like the legacy media. They keep everybody out, and this is the story we're going with. And if they're the only ones out there, that's the only story that gets out.
Yes.
Another good piece of evidence is the Mount St. Helens eruption. So when Mount St. Helens blew up, it's got an ice cap on there. It did.
Right.
And first of all, you had this massive amount of mudslides that came down. Mm-hmm. And then you had all this water that came down at the same time. Mm-hmm. Well, this whole sedimentary layers you can see here, all these different layers.
Yes.
They were formed in hours.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Mount St. Helens, or
yep,
is that
that's at the base of Mount St. Helens?
Okay, gotcha.
And all this was formed in days, if not hours. And then when the water kept coming, it cut through it.
Yeah.
And that's where you had the canyon that was formed. Mm-hmm. And so this is the kind of stuff that they just don't tell you. And and when I was in FFA, we did what was called soil judging.
FFA, for those that don't know.
Oh, Future Farmers of America. I grew up on a farm. Thanks. And so what they would do quite often is you'd take a mason jar, and you would take some soil and you'd stick it in the jar and you'd shake it up really good. And then you'd set it down. And then when the layers would form, you would judge what type of soil was in the jar. And just to let you know, it doesn't take, millions of years for the jar here to form these layers. It does it in a couple hours. Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't take millions of years. And so when you have a catastrophic flood, mm-hmm. all the soil gets churned up, just like you do when you shake in the jar, right? And then these layers will form, and then as water keeps traveling, when the water slows down, it drops all the sediments. I mean, I see that in my driveway every time it rains out here. Right. And then when fast water cuts through that same spot, now it's taking that sediment with it again. And so the idea that it takes, millions and millions of years for the sediment layers to form or to erode is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, during the flood, the water crested for 150 days, like it says there in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
So there was plenty of time for these layers to settle and start forming, just like when you shake that jar up. There's plenty of time for all those layers to settle down.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the water began to recede, now it starts cutting through those layers that was just formed.
Right.
And it makes perfect sense. I mean, one thing that we see here, this is a canyon that's in Burlingame Canyon. It's in Washington State. It's 1,500 feet long. It's 120 feet wide, a big canyon, and it was formed in a few days. The irrigation district opened the valve too far, and all the water went out one side, and then it just cut through and formed this canyon. And it's
Wow.
120 feet high, so it's pretty darn high. And this was formed in days, not millions of years. And
Yes.
so the Grand Canyon didn't need to form in thousands of years. It didn't take that long. Just like in Mount St. Helens, you see all those layers. They were formed in days and they got washed out in days.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take that long. And there's just a ton of evidence out there that debunks the idea that many of the land formations that we see took millions of years. I want to show you this map here of the Grand Canyon. Okay, so here's Grand Canyon National Park right here. Okay, and it cuts right through the middle of this mountain range that goes right here.
Mm-hmm.
And as you zoom in, you're going to learn something really interesting. The elevation of this mountain that goes all the way through on both sides, it is 8,000 feet on this side of the north rim, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the south rim over here, it's about 7,500 feet. So there's a little bit of a drop, 500 feet. But on this side over here of this mountain range, it's down to like 4,000 feet. The town here of Cameron, right here,
Mm-hmm.
it's at 4,200 feet. And then Gray Mountain over here is at 5,000 feet. So why did the water go uphill to cut through this mountain range? It went right through here. Last time I checked, water went downhill, not uphill, right?
Right.
So how did the water decide to cut the Grand Canyon through the mountain? That makes no sense whatsoever. Well, it makes sense if you think about how much of this was laid and then the water level was actually above the mountain range. That's the only way you could have something like this happen.
Right.
Water doesn't flow uphill. It just doesn't. And, very simple things that we see out there that completely defies the idea that all this had to take place over millions of years of erosion. And, they just don't talk about it. That's the way they get around it. There's another great example of this that takes place in Montana. So here in Montana, you see all of these mud flows, okay? And this is all rock. This is a mountain range rock. It's up there by Bighorn River. And you see this is an aerial photograph. And this looks just like a mud flow, okay? The way the swirling of the rock, And then if you look over here in this area here, you see here's Bighorn River. It goes up the hill, cuts through the mountain, and then comes back down the other side. Once again, last time I checked, water went downhill, not uphill. It should have gone this other route of erosion. And, once again, you see these all over the place where if you use the traditional explanation by our consensus science, they make no sense. And we see a lot of examples of how these layers have gotten formed. all over the place. One of the big things is a archaeologist, or he's a geologist, and his name is Dr. Andrew Snelling, and he looked at a lot of these formations that were in Grand Canyon National Park, and he saw that they were clearly formed not by a natural process, because they'll tell you the tectonic plates moved the soil and they caused everything to move over time. But in reality, you see this swirling process of the rock. That how did it get formed like this if it was, because they want to tell you everything was laid flat over millions of years. But in reality, you see something just completely different. Let me fix the slide here real quick. Okay, so look at this rock formation here. So how did the rocks get formed in this curved manner like this? If
that's pretty wild, you know.
And there's not just one of these, they're all over the place. Look at this one. You see the rocks move and they come back up. Here's another one. You see how it looks like a mud flow. This does not look like it was layer after layer over millions of years.
So what we're talking about here is catastrophism, that concept that something catastrophic occurred here that caused some of these formations. Is that what you're getting at here?
Yeah, well, and that's what Dr. Andrew Snelling was trying to say, is these layers were formed when they were wet, when they were laid wet. They weren't formed by millions of years of sediment over a long period of time. They were all laid wet, and they were laid at the same time. And it was a catastrophic flood event. Look at this guy here. See how let me go back a little bit here. See how the rock goes down and it comes back up. It actually does a 180.
I see it.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Wild.
Yeah.
It actually does a 180. And there's another one over here. You can kind of see it does the same thing. It does a 180, went down in this hole and it came back up. And obviously these layers had to be liquid when they happened. Look at this guy here. See how they're moving up and down and up and down. And you know, they'll try and tell you, oh, the tectonic plate movement caused these gently over millions of years caused these shifts. Well, the problem is when Dr. Andrew Snelling went and analyzed these layers, there's no fracturing. They were laid, and the sedimentary layers were laid, and they formed, and there's no fracturing in it. There's no micro fractions in any of this stuff.
Yeah, when you think of water, like there's a comment on the screen right now, AJ. If that much water was on the earth, we know, we can see what water does in a flood situation, how it just moves everything. But that much water laying on things would do some moving. You know?
Yeah. Well, and once again, you have a scenario where the floodwaters raised for 150 days, they crest.
Mm-hmm.
All that sedimentary layer laid down, just like in the jar, right, for soil judging. And then as the water began to recede, it began to push and cut through and erode those still mud layers at this point, which had previously been formed. And so once again, everything points to the fact that there were all laid at the same time, and they were soft when they were laid, and erosion dug them out while they were still wet. Only way you're going to get those scenarios is with a flood.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, there's some more dramatic ones. I want to show you some of these. I'll go through them quick. I mean, just look at this guy here.
Wow,
that's a mud flow.
Do you know where this is?
These are all in the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
Grand Canyon area.
Okay.
Look at this one.
So let me ask you this. AJ. So we got the Grand Canyon. I know there's a big canyon in Mexico. So why certain places have these formations as opposed to seeing more of these in other places. Any thoughts on that or ideas? Why is it?
Well, it's because the Grand Canyon has exposed all these layers. Because you had such a huge canyon, you get to see through all this layers of soil. I mean, from the top of the canyon to the bottom is like what, 2,500 feet, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And
right,
so,
right.
So you get to see a strata of that much soil that you really can't see anywhere else. I'm sure you would see these same things everywhere on the planet, but it's only in the Grand Canyon you see such so much exposed layers all at once, and that's where you get to see all of them.
Okay.
But this one here is crazy because this is like waves in the soil. See how it goes in this swirly manner?
Yeah, that is pretty freaky.
That is, yeah. That is.
And well, no, this was a tectonic plate movement. You know, there was shifts here. You know, and it made it do an S curve. Really, I mean, that's all they got. That's all they got. Another good proof of the flood is these, what they call them is polystrate petrified trees, where they have a tree that shoots up through multiple layers.
Oh, wow.
So the tree is petrified, right?
Yeah.
But also the layers around it are petrified. And so the way that the trees are petrified is they are encapsulated in soil, so they can't move, and as they decompose, mineralization takes place, and it replaces the rotting wood slowly but surely, just like, and it's kind of like if you take I had really bad hard water when I was a kid, and you would have these towels, and if you'd leave them out, they would get crunchy, and we've had them petrify there, just sitting out in the sun because such hard water, and,
right.
And you would have this towel that just turned into a brick. Well, that's the same process here with these trees. And I mean, guys, tell me the scenario. You're going to have a tree petrified through multiple layers where each layer is a million years. I mean,
that's a good question, AJ. Because it's really like, wait a minute, how does this tree end up in this rock formation? It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And you saying you had a number of pictures there. This is in a lot of different places.
This is in a lot of different places.
This
is not just one one.
And thing you're showing is basically this is all this from the flood, that occurred. And
the flood caused all this.
Hey, the flood. Yeah. Hey, that could be an answer.
Yeah. No, they've excluded that answer. You can't. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what they play.
Okay.
I mean, they play all kinds of dirty tricks. Well, here, for instance, Dr. Andrew Snelling, he publishes some of his findings. You know, this was back in the day when they thought there was some integrity there, I guess.
Is he still around, AJ?
Yes.
Or is he?
Yes.
Okay.
He's still around. Well, he goes and he sends in his permit to go and do some more rock hunting and excavation and take some of his samples, and he consistently starts getting his permits denied. Right? They won't they keep denying his permits. Well, finally, in 2017 he sues them because
when you say them, who is them?
The National Park Service.
Okay.
The National Park Service, and they routinely give out these. Especially, he's got all the credentials. He's a doctorate of geology. He's done these before, but once he started publishing his beliefs that these were made by these layers were laid wet, not dry, then, and this points towards the flood, well, then they just started denying his permits. Well, he sues them, and in discovery, he gets all these emails, right? And straight up in the emails, and he's on YouTube. He's done several interviews on this, and straight up proof they denied his permits specifically because it didn't promote atheism. You know, it backed the biblical flood account, and they settled immediately as soon as he got a hold of the emails. Then it was like they were done, and they gave up, and they wanted to look the other way. But I mean, that's what you're dealing with here. The reason that you don't have this information is it's suppressed. It's suppressed.
Does this guy have a website, or he's just on the YouTube video type format?
Well, he actually works for a bigger organization.
Okay.
And if you, I've got his name here real quick. And I've seen him before, and he works with several other organizations, but he Creation Science Foundation is who he works with.
Okay.
So very interesting guy. You can just type his name is on YouTube, and you can find some of these interviews. And he likes talking about this lawsuit that he was in, because as soon as he got the proof, they pretty much settled immediately. Because they had nothing. I mean, the evidence was so clear.
Yeah.
And that's the game they play. That's the game they play. Another very interesting piece of evidence is what's found on the Himalayan mountains. So all across the Himalayan mountains, there's been a lot of hikers and mountain climbers that have seen just a huge deposits of fossils, specifically aquatic fossils, on top of the Himalayan mountains. Even on Mount Everest, they've found thousands of clams and bivalves and every little aquatic animal you can think of on top of a mountain. And I've seen it before. I've been hiking up in Oregon, and you're walking around and you find these fish fossils on top of the mountain, and you're like, what are they doing up here? And of course, they're going to tell you, oh, this took millions of years to happen. But one of the interesting things they see is many of these clams, they're petrified in the closed position. Like this guy right here. This was found on the Himalayas. And when clams, when they die, they open up, right? That's just what they do. They lose all their muscles, and they open up. So these clams were buried. They were buried when they were alive.
Right.
Okay.
Wow.
On top of a mountain. So once again, it points.
What is this? What is the scientific or atheistic explanation for this type of thing, AJ? What do they say
tell
if
you.
you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I really.
I think I've read about it. That I think they say that this was the ocean floor, and over the millions of years, the mountain forms and the crust pushes up, and all the stuff in the ocean floor got pushed up into a mountain. That's what
I've heard that one, but how the clams, all these clams are dead, buried. That's the question that I haven't seen answered.
Yeah, no, that's a nuance that I have not heard before, AJ. Very interesting what you just said about the clam. Yeah.
Well, and it's not just in the Himalayas. This is the Andes. Okay, this is over on the Andes of Peru, and once again, these are petrified clams, and all of them you can see. And the same thing applies.
Those are some big clams, man. I didn't know they got that big.
Yeah, they're some giant clams, know. And once again, they're petrified, and they're in the closed position.
In the Andes.
In the Andes of Peru.
Okay.
And so, once again, you get so much evidence that points towards the flood, and it's not just in one location, it's everywhere.
Right.
And the evidence is just overwhelming, and we have to realize the room that we're in. These are atheists they're trying to suppress the truth, and they've lived the lifestyle their entire life against God, and they desperately are trying to justify it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see it, well, the same institutions that are going to try and tell you, this evidence doesn't exist, are the same people that are promoting, and homosexuality, everything you can think of, abortion, all in the same institutions. So Christ says you're going to know a tree by its fruits, and that's the fruits of the our universities. They have purposely tried to suppress this information. It's pretty shameful. We need to get into Noah's Ark. We've been talking about everything else.
So listen, we got about 10 minutes left. We're going to bring you back in August. So kind of figure out what you want to do in the next 10 or 15 minutes here. But we're going to continue, the conversation. I don't want you to, have to force it or you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, I mean, this is a good foundation.
Yeah, definitely. I like what this program has turned into. Do you want to finish up on this theme, or do you want to start to introduce what we're going to get into?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, as a teaser, I'll just call it a teaser, into Noah's Ark, is that when you go through all the evidence for the Durupinar site, I mean, it's just incredible how much information there is there. I mean, I'm going to zoom in here real quick.
So when you say the Durupinar site, AJ, can you just let the audience know a little bit about what you mean by that for those that aren't familiar?
Where's that?
Sure.
Where's that?
So it's in Turkey, and the Turkish government have actually built a visitor center for it right over here. You can see the visitor center, Noah's Ark Visitor Center. It's located in the mountains of Ararat. And there is just a ton of archaeological evidence that supports that this is the location of Noah's flood. And you can see the outline here. It's once again, they have a lot of mudslides on this mountain when the snow and ice melts. And so it's constantly moving down. It's got caught in these mud flows. But in our next program, we can go through a bunch of this evidence. And it's very interesting. It's exciting to know that, we're not crackpots here. Our faith and our belief isn't based on campfire stories or legends and folklore. It's based on evidence.
You would agree, AJ, that more needs to be done to prove whether or not that would be the site. But your contention is that they're not allowing people to do what could be done there to really know what's down there.
Is it the government of Turkey that's not allowing people to do it?
No. And this is the same thing that happens in Israel. It happens in a lot of these areas. So the Turkish government, they got their own bureaucracy problems. They build a visitor center because they think it's Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
But or do they just want to make a buck?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that because they're Islamic, but they have regard for the Book of Genesis.
Sure, yeah.
It's the universities in Turkey have the same problems as the universities here, as the universities in Israel. So in many countries like Turkey and Israel, there's a process to get a permit to dig. And in order to get a permit, you have to, first of all, you have to be a credentialed archaeologist backed by a university. And you have to, like in Israel, you got to have 10 years of dig experience. So we're talking 18 years total, right? You got to, just to get to be qualified to file the permit, you have to be backed by a university, right? So they have to have your backing, and you have to have funding. And so you've got to make everybody happy. Most of the funding, believe it or not, comes from a lot of Christian organizations that they're interested in this biblical subjects. But the universities, they're all atheists. And so that's why you get these, these digs that, like I've said before, it's like the garnishment around your plate. It's the parsley.
Yeah.
They want to talk about this boat they found. Could this be the boat that the 12 apostles fished out of? Or they'll find a bowl and wonder, maybe the early Christians used this style of bowl or cup or whatever. But the real discoveries that would prove the authority of the Scripture, like Noah's Ark, like the Ark of the Covenant, like some of these other ones, they won't touch with a 10-foot pole. I mean, it's all over Biblical Archaeology Review magazine. That's the topics they cover, is things that don't matter. Or if they do cover them, they poo-poo them, and they make you think that your faith is built on campfire stories. And so
Finish up. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And so with the Durupinar side especially, I've seen multiple archaeologists, belittle it because there's never been a dig there, right?
Right.
If there was so much evidence, why doesn't someone just go there and dig up the site? And yet they're the same people that are blocking them from doing the dig.
For making
I
the
mean,
roll.
it's just incredulous how dishonest they are.
Yeah, this might get ahead in it, but isn't it that the reason the story that was released was like some ground penetrating radar or so or
Right.
whatever was able to go and find some rooms or something underneath this structure?
Right.
How did they allow them to do that? Who allowed them to do that?
Well, once again, the Turkish government, because they didn't actually dig in the ground.
Gotcha.
So that they can do. They can let them go out there. You can be a non-archaeologist and you can walk around on the ground, right?
Okay.
But you can't actually dig into the ground unless you get an archaeological permit and you get backed by a university, and you have to be a professor of archaeology with all these credentials in order to dig in the ground. Mm-hmm. And so what they're hoping is that if they do enough of this ground penetrating radar and show enough evidence, that there'll be enough pressure to actually go and do a dig. But these guys are just so dishonest. You got another example? We got enough time? I can throw in another quick example here.
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, we got enough time. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the two-tiered layer of justice, the double standard. So you've got Kathleen Kenyon. She excavates Jericho. And she did this in the 1950s. Okay. Mm-hmm. Why she had to excavate it again, because it had just been excavated in the 30s. So she goes back there and she excavated again. Well, because the findings in the 30s back the scriptural narrative, that it was destroyed in the Bronze Age, the late Bronze Age. Well, she goes there and she does her excavation. She immediately gets a permit. She immediately gets backing by everybody she's supposed to get backing. Mm-hmm. And she writes a book. She does all this PR campaigns, but she never actually submits her data for peer review. Never. I mean, the amount of fanfare that she got over this, speaking gigs, seminars, keynote speakers, online interviews, or on TV interviews she got over debunking the Bible was just enormous. And yet she died and never published any of her data. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing, is we ain't doing nothing for you until you publish your data, you put it up for peer review, and we look at it. But if you want to debunk the Bible, well, then you get a complete hall pass. And then
now, the study was done in the 1930s. Was that evidence presented for peer review?
Her dig was done in the 50s, right after World War II.
Right, the one before that. Right.
She died in her stuff, and it was never published.
Okay.
And then finally, enough pressure built, because it's now getting into the 80s and the 90s. They finally published her data in the late 1980s, early 90s, and come to find out she was wrong on everything. Specifically her dating techniques. She wasn't a pottery expert, was the big thing. And then all of her dating was based off of just conjecture. So she got tore up. And this is academia for you. So they go out, and even the carbon-14 dating they didn't match her dating, right? It showed 14th century BC is when it was destroyed. They had jars of grain that had been found. Remember, because Joshua told them to burn everything? Mm-hmm. And so they found these jars of burnt grain there, right? Which is weird. You go and you sack a city, you usually take the stuff to the winners get the spoils, but they left everything there, right? Back to the biblical narrative. So they take some samples of this grain, and they carbon-14 date it, and carbon-14 days off a little bit, but it was definitely showed that the city had been around during the time the conquest of Canaan and was destroyed afterwards. Immediately after they got tore up, after this was published, like 40 years after the fact, they recalibrate Intercal, which is the carbon-14 date calibration system. They immediately recalibrate it, and then they push the dating back to match Kathleen Canyon's original date that she picked. I mean, these guys are scandalous. They're gangsters. And so anybody who does biblical archaeology and they're looking at the late 2 Bronze Age, the reason they ignore carbon-14 dating during that period of time is because it's all whacked and it's all off to back up Kathleen Canyon. I mean, that's the level of dishonesty that goes on here. I wish I had the picture. I got it somewhere dug in my files, and you'll see this hook mark where they've got the calibration line comes here, and then it goes down, and then it comes back up, and then it keeps going, and it's a total joke, but that's the room we're in. I'd like to read a scripture here real quick before we close, specifically about these people, these workers of iniquity, who they basically suppress the truth, and that's what these guys do. These guys suppress the truth. That's all they do. And then this is over in Romans chapter 1, and we're going to pick it up in verse. We'll pick it up in verse 18. Indeed, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven upon all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So this is what they do. They're unrighteous and they suppress the truth. Because what may be known of God is manifest among them, for God has manifested to them. So, there's some basic things about the creation that we should be able to see just from the naked eyes. You don't have to be a Christian or be exposed to the truth to at least see the Creator in the creation.
Right.
And yet that's what they suppress. For the invisible things of him are perceived from the creation of the world, being understood by the things that were made, both his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Don't think that these university professors have an excuse that, they're just misspoken, or they don't have enough evidence, or they're just we need to do another study and then they'll eventually figure it out. No, Paul says these guys are without excuse, because when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were they thankful, but became vain in their own reasonings, and their foolish hearts were darkened. While professing themselves to be wise, professors, while professing themselves to be the wise ones, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into the likeness and image of corruptible man, of birds and four-footed creatures and creeping things. For this cause God has abandoned them to the uncleanness of lusts of their heart, to disgrace their own bodies between them, who exchanged the truth of God for a lie. They worshipped and served the created thing more than the one who is the creator. And isn't that what we see quite often? We see a lot of these environmental fanatics and in these universities, and it hasn't changed a whole lot from the time of Paul. And he says, for this cause God has abandoned them to disgraceful passions, for even their women exchange the natural use into what is contrary to nature. In the same manner men did the same. And we see that as well. A lot of this sexual immorality has come out of our universities. And this is the end result of our universities. They suppress the truth, and God has basically given them over to a debased mind. And we have to realize that's the room we're in. And I'm not here to just bash all the universities, but our young people need to know this before they go in there to these universities. They need to know that there's an extreme bias against Christianity. And I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily worth it to engage them, but they need to know going in there, hey, this is what you're getting into. You can get what you need out of it to get a career. You can go in there and learn what you need to learn. You can regurgitate on the paper what they tell you to write down. But at the end of the day, you need to know that they're liars and they suppress the truth. And don't let them destroy your faith.
Yeah, my daughter's going away to school this fall. She's done 1 year community college, and I've been having some conversations with her and building her up on these areas to say, hey, well, let me tell you this and let me tell you that, because you're going to hear some of this when you go away. But listen, AJ, really interesting subject. We're at the end of our time. We want you to comment here just to conclude, but I just looked at the schedule. We got you coming back to finish this subject August 25th, I believe. Let me make sure. While you finish up, let me make sure of that date, okay? Yeah, August 25th. We're going to have you back, AJ, to conclude and really get into the site and everything, and some of your thoughts about that, some of the different ideas that are out there on that.
Well, thanks for having me on again. I appreciate it. It's a passion of mine to be able to find evidence for the Word of God, because it's everywhere and it's amazing. And, the faith chapter, Hebrews chapter 11, it gives the definition of faith, and it says, faith is the evidence of things not seen. Okay. We weren't there when these things happened. We weren't there when these floodwaters receded, when these layers of sediment were laid, when this erosion took place, but we see the evidence of it. Christianity isn't blind faith. It's faith in the evidence that you didn't see it, but you see the evidence of God, and the evidence of God is everywhere. And so we don't have to have this belief in blind faith. We have a faith. We see the evidence that God exists. And this is a warning to many of us, as we know, as we near the time of the ends, that just as the level of wickedness gets so high, and God said he's had enough, he's done it before, and he's going to do it again. And that's a warning that should be for all of us to take note of.
Yeah. Many people have that misunderstanding that, and again, maybe the false Christianity is a lot of blind faith and believing a lot of stuff that's not true. But true Christianity is faith that's built upon reason, built upon evidence. And that's what this whole program is about, proving all things through evidence. And the preponderance of evidence, like I said, for the flood, for the Bible, for almost like everything, there's so much evidence out there. It's hard for me to believe that someone would not want to follow God because of all that he has provided in means of evidence of his existence and what he's doing on this earth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I liked your map of the world to start off the show, and just all those different locations. Some are way out there that have this similar story. There's an easy answer and a hard answer for that one. Again, we'll take the easy one, man.
Good stuff, AJ. I'll leave you. Give us a parting thought or line, and then we'll conclude.
Well, we all have our times in life, and easy times and hard times. And when those hard times come, and we have to make hard decisions, and that's the key time, is when we suppress what we think is the decision to make, and we don't do it because God has commanded us in a different way of life. And when we've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that God exists, he is going to hold me accountable for my actions. He's going to bless me when I do good. That's how we get through those tough times. And as we prove all of these things in our life, and we prove that the existence of God and the flood, and it reaffirms the fact that the Word of God, the Holy Scriptures, is inspired, and inspired by the prophets, and it's inspired by Jesus Christ, and that we can live our lives by this, and we can get through those hard decisions because we know he exists, and he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him.
All right. Hey, thank you, AJ. Good words to end with. We want to thank everybody who's joined us today, watching Prove All Things, and we hope everyone joins us next week on another edition. So goodbye to everyone for now. Goodbye.
Thank you.